be really careful whenever you're working on this stuff, because this aluminum is pretty sharp and it will slice you open. So try not to do that. New timing chain, cam chain guide, whatever you want to call it's on. So with only a little casualty on my finger here, which that's fine. It's gonna happen when you're working on stuff. Next step is to get the cam chain on and put everything back together. Old chain, new chain. Can't really tell difference in either of them. I mean, this one obviously is just newer, so I don't see any visible difference in it. This one does have a white mark on it, but toss that to the side. Let's put this new one in. Probably the easiest way to get this cam chain back on is to take this oil pump off with these 3 bolts, but I didn't want to have to take it off. So in order to put the chain on, all I did was slide the chain sprocket off to the end, take the chain through the top, and come out the bottom here, slide the chain on to the sprocket, because you can't get the chain on the sprocket without this oil pump being off. So if you slide the chain on before the oil pump, because there's this guard here, there's that little lip right there, and the chain will not clear it. You have to slide the chain on, slide the sprocket back to place, and then you can slide the chain up. And I need to get some wire to hold the chain up to the frame so it doesn't move. I could not for the life of me figure out why my 10mm socket was slipping on all the 10mm bolts. Well, I figured out why. It's because I had the 11 on it. So let's get my impact back, slip this 10 on, and get this screen out for you guys to see. Don't lose these bolts. I would recommend not to do this one-handed. It's a lot harder. And then this screen you just pull out, just like that. There's the screen. Won't drip oil everywhere. And I would just clean it off with some brake cleaner, which I'm about to do. And just like that, it's clean with some brake cleaner. Now there's some small stuff stuck in the screen, and I'm not really worried about that. So I'm just gonna slide it back into place here, put that bolt in, and we should be good to go to the next step. The other good thing about these gears for your cam chain is they only go in one way. So they have a keeper on them, or like a notch there, so they can only slide on one way. You cannot put them on unless they're going that exact way, just like that. So if you kind of remember the orientation from whenever you pull the cam chain out, and don't lose the washer like I just did, you can kind of figure out where they go. Just like that. Find your washer that fell and wipe it off, because now it's covered in dirt and grime. Pop that washer back on. Get your nut. Sometimes these nuts have a outside-inside mark, but I do not think this one does. You just kind of look, it looks like this was the outside. So that's how I'm going to put it back on. Screw it on, and I'm sure there is a torque measurement for that. So I'm going to go ahead and look it up, see if there's a torque spec that I need to follow for this nut on the, I'm not sure what this shaft is, but I'm sure there's a torque spec for it. I could not find any torque spec values for this nut, so I will just continue on and move on to the next step. So I think before I put my clutch basket back on, I'm going to try to clean up this gasket area. That way I can get all the old gasket off, so when I put the new one on, it seals properly. So to do that, I'm just going to take a razor blade and scrape this off very carefully. Try not to mar up anything. And then I might take a brass wheel brush. I saw a video on here of a guy doing that, so we'll see how that turns out. This brass wheel cut brush thing is working great. I would just recommend covering all your gears with something because it flings out a lot of the old gasket stuff everywhere. So that's what I would recommend doing. Got all the gasket material off. The wheel worked perfectly for up here, about to here, and the same down to here. Then I had to use a razor blade and scrape all the rest of that off. Now, I did get gasket material all inside here. So what I did was I used some cheap brake cleaner and sprayed everything out that I could. It's probably not the best idea because you're supposed to have oil in here, but it will be filled up with oil before the end of the day. So hopefully won't have time to rust. Hopefully. So in case this happens to you, when I was trying to put the clutch basket back on, the gear came apart from the actual basket. So you just have to make sure you put the washer on and put these clutch pads, I guess they are. Put, clutch pad metal, clutch pad metal, clutch pad metal, all the way to the end. And the last pad you put opposite of that right there. So we'll get all this back on. Put these two washers on that came off right there like this. Figure I could try to show you. One goes on that way. I feel like it goes that way. And then there's an outside stamp on this that you put on. Okay, and then you get the stake nut and make sure there's not hair on it, like that. And put the stake nut on. And then I'm going to attempt to look up a torque spec value for this too. So I'll let you know if I find one. So you torque this to 108 Nm. I'm not sure if that stands for Newton meters or nanometers. I'm not sure. Or 80 foot-pounds of torque. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so the only issue I had with this stake nut, putting it back in, is I did not have a tool that you're supposed to have to hold this clutch wheel from spinning. So in order for me to put it back on, I literally just used my 1/2 inch impact with my 27 or your, 1 1/16 socket on here, and just did it as best I could. And if you look, it's basically at the same point where it was staked before. So I'm going to go ahead and stake it again and hopefully call that good, because I can't really torque it to test it because I don't have anything to hold this. So we'll see how it turns out. I staked it as best I could. I would recommend getting a punch, but I don't have one. So what I used was just a flathead screwdriver and a mallet. Hopefully that works. We'll find out. Once your clutch basket is in, you can put this, I'm not sure what this is, a cover holder on, but make sure you put your plunger in first, because it has to go in first. And then you can put these bolts in with the springs and just do them a star pattern. Jump, boom, 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 boom. Like that until they're tight. I'm going to go ahead and look up a torque spec for that, because I don't know what it is, or if there is one. And just like that, the clutch basket is back on. All your gears should be back on. Cam chain's on. So everything's good to go now for a gasket. I got the screen back on. Everything should be good to go. I will put the other cam chain guard on right there. I'll show you guys how that works. This is the other cam chain guard, and it literally just slides into here, which if your cam chain isn't in the way, I need to get some wire for that. Is it like that, or I believe it's, now I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. Now that makes more sense. Just slides in there like that, and the chain can rest on each side of the guards there. Like that, right there and right there. Alright, on to the next step. So I have the case ready to get put back on. I have the gasket on here. But I don't know if you guys have ever seen someone do this. If you just stick these bolts every time you take one off of here and put them on the same pattern as you took them off, it works really well. What it did for me. So that way you know exactly where they go. There is a dowel right there to hold that gasket. And I'm hoping there's a dowel on the other side of this case. And there is right there. Oh man, I forgot I have to get this gasket off this case. Alright, well, I'll attempt to get that off.